Manus flat on the canvas. We are ready to rock and roll. Second round of action. There is a cut on Manus.
Yeah. Jesus.
Martial arts chat.
My man B-Hop got dropped out the ring last night. I need a little judo baby. And let's do it, Ron. Let's keep me up.
See what tells me that you've got a face for radio.
Martial arts.
Hello, welcome to the Martial Arts Chat podcast. On tonight's show, we'll be looking ahead to UFC 234. Gastelum versus Whittaker takes place next Sunday, and we're live on the Roundtable. So remember, hit me up during the live stream with your questions and comments and picks. Before I introduce tonight's panel, just a quick shout out to the sponsors. A1 Fight here. A1 Fight use the latest cutting edge boxing gloves for professional and amateur fighters, gym enthusiasts, and kickboxers. So local and national gyms in the UK, do yourselves a favour, go check out a1fightgear.com. And if you want to get into shape, get back into shape, go to beastgear.co.uk, use the coupon code Martial Arts Chat. If you do that, you'll save 15% off your purchases for course sliders, straps, barbell pads, all different strength and conditioning programs to suit your needs at all levels. So beast your goals with beastgear.co.uk. And finally, we're also sponsored by the MMA Takeover.com. For the real MMA rankings, you need to visit MMA Takeover.com or visit them on Facebook or on Twitter. And so, to our panel this evening, the head honcho of MMA Takeover, also writer for Fanside, for Sherdog, and host of the Loudmouth MMA podcast, it's Mr. Keith Shillan. Keith, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. I've been a big fan of the show for a long time, so it's great to finally speak with you, and we have a fantastic panel, so I'm honored to be part of it. Thanks a lot.
It's a pleasure, man. Thanks for coming on. Returning to the Roundtable, Crystal Palace's biggest fan, they say, and from the MMA Fight Bible, it's Mr. Chris Allen. Chris, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, very good, John. Thank you very much, as always, for having me on. Always look forward to this time of the month, and look forward to chatting with the panel tonight, especially with some of the experienced people on the panel. I feel like I'm around celebrities tonight, so yeah, look forward to it.
You'll be asking for an autograph later on, me too, man. That's it. Finally, from the MMA Power Hour, a pleasure having him on the Roundtable this evening. It's Mr. Colin Crandall. Colin, how are you, sir?
Doing great, John. A pleasure to be here. Big fan of your show, and I'm honored to be here, participate with you, great journalists from the UK as well as the other journalists here from the United States. Pleasure to be here.
Gentlemen, UFC 234 is just round the corner. Some tasty matchups, as they say on this card, and I want to get your thoughts and possibly predictions before we get into fan questions later. So let's get started with the co-main event for this one, because this guy really excites me, man. He has done for the last 18 months or whatever. Israel Adesanya, man. The guy when he got into MMA, he was like, to me, it was like, oh, this is a wee bit Anderson Silverish, you know what I mean? And now we've got him matched with Anderson Silva. It's fantasy, man. I mean, I'm now thinking about it. This could be death knell, maybe not, but I hope not. Right? But this could be this is fantasy booking, and it hopefully lives up to the hype, man. I can't wait to see this fight. Cannot wait. I'm so pumped for it. Let's hear the panel's thoughts. We'll start with Colin. This one, Colin, give me your thoughts on this middleweight fight.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it, John. The only thing I wish is that somehow this came about 5 years ago when Anderson was a bit younger, even though at that point he had perhaps declined a little bit. Now I feel it just may be a little bit too late to be as competitive as it may have been. However, Jose Aldo yesterday pointed out that that's not always the case when a veteran, and also Donald Cowboy Cerrone a few weeks ago. So, anything is possible. I mean, I'd love to see a very competitive fight. I really would. As a bit of an older guy myself, I'd love to see the old champion and pull this out and surprise the odds makers and everything. So I'm cheering for Anderson Silva, but I am quite impressed with Israel Adesanya, and I think it's going to be an exciting fight, more than likely with Israel looking like the new Anderson Silva, possibly in taking the victory. But love to see Anderson do well in a great match.
Yeah, for sure, man. I just want to see how it goes down, for sure. I'm the same. Chris, how about you, mate? What do you expect when Silva and Adesanya throw down?
Well, at the end of it, obviously everyone's expecting Israel to take this one, but I've been watching Anderson Silva. I've been watching it since I've been watching UFC. And I really want him to win. And unfortunately, since the leg break, he just hasn't been the same anymore after losing to Weidman. So I think he's coming back against a very tough opponent, and he's going to have a tough test ahead of him. As you said, he's mirroring his younger self.
Yeah.
So it's the young versus the old, and it'd be interesting to see how it goes down. I want Silva to win, but if not, it'd be nice to see Israel take his rise to the top, and if he does beat Anderson, I think he will make it to his title shot eventually and win.
Yeah, for sure, man. Definitely. I mean, I hear what you're saying about the leg break, and I'm probably of that mindset as well. But that fight with Bisping, man, okay, it wasn't turning back the clock, but there was moments in that fight you're like, oh, there was so many, oh my god,
oh yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I hope he's not done, and I hope maybe 5 rounds is a bit much to ask of Silva. Maybe even 3 rounds is a bit much to ask of Silva. But if there's flashes of the spider in this fight, that's good enough for me. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Do any of you guys feel that he may want to initiate some grappling? That would be really bizarre to imagine. But would you think if things start going sour for Anderson, he may have been practicing a bit of wrestling, and we may see Anderson for the first time ever looking to get this match to the ground?
I mean, I can't imagine. No, I know, subs off his back comes to mind, like Chael Sonnen, of course. Well, I guess he choked out.
A black belt.
He choked out Dan Henderson, didn't he, back in the day? So, I mean, he's no stranger to a ground game. Initiating it to the ground, I don't know, man. That's a good question. I have my doubts. I would think that he would want to prove to the young lion that this is still his territory, I guess. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He's got to get close enough to Israel to actually get him to take down. Unless he uses old school, he's a black belt in Muay Thai. If he gets the Muay Thai clinch and trips him or something like that, he could get him down. But I just don't think he's going to get close enough to him. That's the problem.
Yeah.
I think you're probably right, mate. Finally, we'll get Keith's thoughts. Keith, give me your thoughts, predictions, if you please, for Israel and Anderson in this one.
I mean, this is what you have a lot of times. This is your classic, feels like the passing of the torch. And it's the perfect way to get over Adesanya. I mean, Adesanya was pretty much the consensus breakthrough star of 2008 of almost every MMA site and podcast that gave out awards. Adesanya was that guy. I mean, he picked up 4 wins in the UFC in a calendar year. And, I mean, it's in his home area in Melbourne. He's from that area. He fights similar to Anderson Silva. He's like the new, younger version. Yeah. And it just, I mean, you've had this before, when Randy Couture fought Lyoto Machida and things like that, where you have the patching of torch. It just makes sense. The thing about Anderson Silva is when you think about him as a fighter, the 2 things that always stood out to me is his composure in the striking game, that he was always so relaxed and he never really wasted energy. And the other thing that he was always great at was his vision. He could see strikes coming at him, slide just out of range to get his head off the center line, but also keeping himself in a good enough position to strike. Because when you get off the center line, you don't want to be all the way out. He'll be out just enough so that he can counter. And the guy that seems to do that even better than him is Israel Adesanya. That's what it is. Israel Adesanya. That's like the 2 best things that come is how relaxed he is, like we saw in the Derek Brunson fight, and then his ability to just see the attacks coming. I agree with what Chris said, that I believe that Anderson Silva's best chance is going to be the clinch. I mean, we remember what he did to Rich Franklin in the clinch, and he did it to Dan Henderson in the clinch and stuff. But, I mean, we haven't seen him in competition in 2 years. I don't know how exactly old he is. He's like 42 or something like that. I mean, there's not many guys, not many 41-year-olds that can win championships other than Tom Brady. There's not many. Right. And one of us got that joke.
I got that. Yeah.
Lost you, man. Lost you a long time ago.
And I was looking at his record today, and so the last time he's actually beat a middleweight without any controversy was Chael Sonnen in 2012. I mean, that was 7 years ago.
Right? Wow.
I mean, and even that fight, I don't know if you remember, with the holding of the shorts and everything, even that one was kind of controversial. So the time he beat a true middleweight, it's been a very long time. I mean, this is just a stylistic nightmare. I expect Adesanya to knock him out. I think it's going to be a brutal knockout.
Okay, man.
It's early too. First, I mean, Silva has that granite chin, so maybe I might be getting a little too excited on Adesanya right now because Silva's always been known to be able to take the best shots.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Adesanya puts him out early.
Do any of you guys feel that Adesanya may be somewhat overconfident going into this?
Well, if I can just interject, just say like there's plenty of that coming in the fan questions, but yes, overconfidence, cocky, like that thin line. We're coming to that in space, man. I wouldn't worry about that. We're definitely getting a lot of people giving him shit. Would you believe? A lot of comments I've had, Colin, are like, yeah, he's just disrespecting Silva. I don't know about all of that, man. That's what made Silva who he was, and like we said, man, this is mirror image. So yeah, man, don't worry, we're getting to there for sure.
Good.
But let's look at another fight, just because we were talking off air. I wanted to get to this one too, which is Jim Crute, Sam Alvey. Because Jim Crute, I heard, I didn't see him. He was on the Contender Series or something. It's not really something I watched, to be honest. But I did see him submit my Scottish brother Paul Beardsley Craig back and forth fight last year, and that was enough to tell me this guy's obviously a high level grappler. I went for the Comuna a couple of times. Persistence paid off. He got the W late in the third round. It's interesting to see how he gets, because he gets a veteran here, let's be honest, and Smiling Sam. I'll start with Keith on this one. Keith, give me your thoughts. Alvey, Crute, light heavyweight, who you got, sir?
I like Crute. I mean, this is another one in his own. He's actually from Melbourne, so it's even tougher. He's going to have a hero's welcome.
Oh yeah.
It's not often that Sam Alvey enters arena and he's going to be booed. I mean, that doesn't happen. Usually he comes out smiling, everyone's sharing. Everyone seems to love Sam Alvey because, I mean, how can you not? He's like friendliest guy on the planet. I think this is really good matchmaking. Even though this was not the original matchup, it was supposed to be against Ryan Spahn. And that I thought would have been a fantastic. You got the technical skills of Crute versus the pure athleticism and raw power of Spahn. But now you get this different angle. You get that gritty veteran with the huge experience.
Yeah.
So it is an interesting matchup. Kind of the right progression of a young fighter. I mean, he's undefeated. We talked about he has a submission win over Paul Craig, which was very impressive. I think it was a first-round submission. And now he's got a guy with so much experience. He's fought everybody at Sam Alvey. I did a lot of research on Crute for a series I did to preview the Contender Series for Fansided, and I watched a lot of Crute stuff. He's not a finished product, and that's a good thing.
And he's a young guy, right? He's only like 21 or something like that, right?
22? I think he's 22, maybe. So the greatest thing about when you see guys at that age, they're gonna still make mental mistakes. Yeah, like we saw Aaron Pico do a week ago. But what also think that happens with young fighters is we see huge leaps in improvement between fight to fight. So we were all impressed with what he did to Paul Craig. Who knows what kind of improvement he can make by this fight? The thing is, the fights I have seen, he has been drawn in brawls. He's got on the feet. He's got really good kicks. He's a longer guy. He has really good kicks. He's a good grappler, though he's not a powerful wrestler. He's not Gregor Gillespie, and Sam Alvey's always been a guy who's been tough to take down. But on the flip side, he's never really faced a powerful wrestler, maybe Rashad Evans, or I should say, like the ghost of Rashad Evans.
The ghost, yeah. That's fair, yeah.
So what Sam has to do is Sam's going to have to draw Crute into a brawl. And being a young fighter, I could see him happening. But the big knock on Sam Alvey, and we all love him, and we all because of how big of a personality. But this is the guy that he gets gun shy. He doesn't throw enough punches. I mean, we saw that in his fight. A perfect example: the Alex Nicholson fight was close because Sam Alvey wasn't being that active. There's another fight I'm thinking of where. Talis Latis was a fight he wasn't being that active. John Vellante, even though he got a win, he was very inactive. The Amid fight was a fight that he lost because he wasn't throwing enough. So Alvey's going to have to fight. In my opinion, Alvey's going to have to fight differently. He's going to have to be the aggressor. He's going to have to march down his opponent. And Alvey's got power. I mean, we've seen that.
Oh yeah.
But at this point, I can't take a guy who just got knocked out by. Little Nagir. I mean, he got knocked out by Little Nog in 2018. I can't pick that over. So I'm going to take young kid. I'm going to take Crute. I don't think he's going to submit Alvey, but I expect to get a decision.
Fair play, mate. I forgot the little nog thing. You're probably quite right. Let's get Colin's thoughts. Colin, how about yourself? Young Aussie takes on the experience. What you got?
Well, I love when they say Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. That's one of my favorite
Yeah,
things.
man, love it.
Yeah, fun people. You know, there's still quite a few people in the United States that couldn't tell the difference between an Australian accent, an English, and a Scottish. Unfortunately, here. Yeah.
Dare you?
I shouldn't say. Yeah, not everyone. But
This is me doing my best to enunciate as well. I could slip into proper Scottish if you want.
Right? You know, so I have no idea. I, on the other hand, can definitely tell the difference in the accents. And the only thing that's tough for me is to tell New Zealand from Australia. That's the one thing that's a tough one.
That's hard.
And I think they're quite similar. They say they're not, but who knows? All respect to both. But here's my thought.
You sound so Canadian. Sorry, on you go.
I know, right? You know, right? That's right, you know. But anyway, as the Canadians say, So yeah, this Wednesday, by the way, we're not to do a plug, but we're going to have Sam Alvey on our show to talk about his coming up match next Saturday. He'll be on Wednesday. This is my thought. Jim Crute, I'm impressed by. I did pick him against your countryman, Paul Craig, although Paul Craig is a tough guy. Sam Alvey is going into this as a late replacement, only on about 3 weeks' notice, I believe. And on top of that, there's the jet lag, having to fly out there to Australia, which is a real thing. And the other guy's just going probably across town from where he lives, Paul Crute. So the other thing, though, is at 22, he's before his prime. And at 32, you might say, in this particular case, Sam Alvey might be a bit past his prime, although normally you're not. The reason why I say he may be is he's actually been fighting MMA since he was 21 years old. So he actually was fighting at the same time, the same age as Crute was. Nevertheless, This is my thought. Despite a bad performance against Little Nog, although Little Nog catches you, he can hurt anyone. Being a southpaw, that also does throw people off a bit, and I think that may have caught Alvey. But I think that Sam Alvey overcomes the odds here and shows that at 32 years old, he's still a viable contender. I don't think Paul Crute's fought anyone with the wrestling of Sam Alvey. Sam Alvey comes out of Dan Henderson's Team Quest, and Dan Henderson has been down there, as he always is, helping and training his guys. So I think that Sam Alvey shows up and throws a little bit of the experience advantage in American wrestling at Jim Crute, and it's a look I think Jim Crute hasn't seen before and won't be prepared for.
Fair play, mate. Chris, let's get your thoughts on this fight, mate.
Well, I'll try not to mirror anything that anyone's just said, but I definitely agree with Colin. I think the best way Alvey's going to take this one is to take Crute to the ground with his inexperience with some of the stronger American wrestlers. But I'm a massive fan of Alvey. I like the fights. They've got the right attitude. He's got the right, he's got the right personality towards the game. He hasn't got all the smack talk, even though sometimes it is good. And what I really like about Alvey is he's not always the most active fighter. He's up and down. He's losing one, then winning two, then losing two, then winning one.
Yeah.
But that's the problem, But the things, he stays in there because he's a fan favourite, and he has gone in there with big boys. He hasn't gone in there against some easy guys. He beat Nate Marquardt. He's beaten the Rashad Evans. He's been in there with some of the bigger boys. So the experience might take this one over Crute, but if I was putting my money on anyone, I would put Crute to win it, definitely, 100%.
Fair play.
And I can't really say much more what anyone else has said, really.
Fair play, man. Guys, let's talk main event before we wrap up with fan questions. Robert Whittaker, Kelvin Gastelum, two fighters in the prime here, man. Middleweight crown, Melbourne, whetting the appetite for a lot of us. Let's start with Chris this time. Chris, who's walking out Melbourne with the middleweight crown for you, sir?
Who's walking? Forrest Whittaker.
Forrest Whittaker.
Where did that come from?
There you go.
I don't know. Cool, I'm sticking with the Commonwealth here. Okay, yeah. Robert Whittaker's walking out with this one, 100%. Don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of Kelvin Gastelum, but you've got to look at the last, God knows how many fights, 9 or 10 fights from Whittaker.
Yeah,
he's beat some top contenders, and you can't take that away from him. And people were counting him out many a time. And I think we all thought when he come up against Ronaldo Souza after such a great run, we thought, here we go, this is the time he's going to get taken down. He's not going to be able to handle it. He's going to get submitted, and he's on the way back down again.
Yeah.
But no, comes back, beats Yoel Romero twice, and but then again, Gastelum, he hasn't had a great run, but recently, the last 2 fights, he's been done well, coming back after the loss to Chris Weidman, beating Michael Bisping, which was a huge win for him, and then again beating Souza as well. It was just by a split decision, but hey, it's enough. A win's a win. So I definitely think this is a good matchup, and definitely a matchup to be made. But if I'm putting my money down, Whisker takes it, and it's not going 5 rounds. Someone's getting knocked out.
Wow, finish, man. Good shout, good shout. Keith, how about you? Main event, who takes it for you, sir?
I agree. I'm going to go for the third time. I'm going to take a fighter from that region. I'm going to take Robert Whittaker. This is a good matchup, a good stylistic matchup. I think both guys are very talented. The fight kind of loses a little bit of a buzz, considering neither guys are trash talkers. They compliment each other. They're shaking hands, they rub each other's backs, being best friends on the reality show. That kind of kills a little buzz.
Really?
The fact that nobody watches. Yeah. The fact that nobody watches the reality show, that kills some buzz.
That does, yeah. That's true.
Then you have obviously you have bigger personalities. I mean, they just had conference for John Jones press conference, Ben Askren, and then you had John Jones fighting last month, and obviously you have the Conor and Habib disciplinary hearings that just happened. So this matchup has not been talked about, and it should be, because there's a lot of questions marks about this. The fact that both guys have been out for a long time. Robert Whittaker is coming back from another injury. The fact that both guys are coming off of some wars. I mean, Gastelum and Jacare banged it out, and Whittaker and Romero was such a good fight. It was many websites fight of the year. So I mean, how will both guys look after being in wars? I mean, we all know that the damage you take in fights, that could be a significant drop for either of these guys. That said, I think about Whittaker and thinking about he faced Yoel Romero his last 2 fights, the kind of athlete he had to deal with that, and then comparing that to Gastelum. I mean, that is a drastic change in athlete. And Whittaker, I just think is a little bit more polished. He has a really good straight right. He has a very good left hook. And one thing I keep just imagining this fight is landing the high kick. He hit Romero with a bunch of them in the first fight, and some in the second fight. He kind of has this really sneaky high kick where he kind of looks like he's going low with his body, then he flips it up on the other side. And he also has insane toughness. If you recall in the first fight, he tore his MCL in the first round.
That's right, yeah.
Romero, and fighting Romero alone seems terrifying to me to fight a guy like you. But fighting him with a major injury after losing the first 2 rounds and then coming back and winning the last 3, and then in the second fight being rocked really bad and surviving to get a decision, whether you thought it was justified or not, whatever, it was a close enough fight. Gastelum's best chance to me is landing that left hook. Yeah. His straight overhand left. Yeah. It is a really good punch. He rocked Jacare with it. Obviously, he floored Chris Weidman with it. Wasn't able to finish up, floored him, and he knocked out Michael Bisping with it. And the thing about Gastelum does well is like we talked about Anderson Silva and Israel Adesanya is their vision. He's really good at just slipping out of the way. He slipped out of the way of an attack from Bisping and then instantly came over that overhand left. And that's his best, in my opinion, that is his best shot, is that slip and rip. The one thing that really concerns me the most of all is the fact of how tired he got in the Gastelum fight. In the Jacare fight. And that was only a 3-round fight. Now, it was an absolute banger. I mean, it was a fantastic. I think it was a dark horse for fight of the year, or kind of like should have at least been in the honorable mention, because I thought it was that good. But these guys at the end of the 3rd round were very tired, and we just saw Whittaker go 25 minutes twice in a row. So I think Whittaker is just going to have a cardio advantage. I think he's a better athlete, and I think eventually, Whittaker might stop it, and it might be from that high kick. So I'll take Whittaker about the 4th round with a high kick.
Oh, I love it, man. 4th round as well. What a call. Superb, man. Superb. Finally, Colin, how about you, sir? Give me your thoughts. Middleweight title fight.
I'm really excited about this fight. My associate from New England, I think, and I'm sorry, I've forgotten. What's my buddy's name there from New England? Is it Keith?
Keith,
yep. Yes. Sorry, Keith. I understand, and I like the what he's pointed out as far as it being not a super exciting, compelling matchup as far as the drama, and in reality that is really important. Obviously, Dana White and UFC management, and would agree 100%. On the flip side of it, I'm an old time martial artist for many years. I started in martial arts when I was 17 years old, and I was interested in it and observing it ever since I was about 10 years old. And I believe in the honor of the sport a lot, and the fact that these are two young men who aren't talking trash, although it makes it not as exciting or interesting. I like that. It's kind of a throwback. And a lot of times when I was younger, they used to say that the baddest guys out there aren't talking trash. They just take care of business.
Sure, yeah.
And you're right. And I think these are two of the most talented guys, 27 years of age for Gastelum, 28 for Whitaker, and I really like and impressed with the fact that they're being completely respectful, despite the fact that they know it would probably be bringing more attention and more favor to them if they weren't. Now, that stated, really interesting matchup. We have two former welterweights fighting here for the middleweight title.
It's true.
And so a lot of people are maybe feeling that I think since Gastelum was a welterweight more recently, that maybe he's the smaller man, and he really isn't, because I believe Whitaker fought more fights at welterweight than Gastelum. Whitaker is 2 inches taller, both of them a bit undersized as far as welterweights, but nevertheless, neither one has the advantage. They're both pretty much in their prime, if not just before their prime. I'm a big Whitaker fan. I like him. Like I mentioned, I like the Aussies. Have never had a single bad experience with anyone from Australia, and so that stated, I feel he lost both Romero fights, and so. I feel like maybe a bit of karma may come back around. Not that he has bad karma, but I think being that he was given 2 gift decisions against Romero, although they were close, I think this may be a tight one that the decision may not go in his favor. I've yet to make a prediction yet, on that, and so I probably will hold off, although I'm leaning toward Gastelum. I think the combination of the wrestling and the striking that Gastelum has is what will do it. We can say that Romero has that, although Romero's striking, I believe, is not as polished as Kelvin Gastelum, and Romero is a bit older. So I think that that's what's going to be the case. I think that what you want to look for is if Gastelum can land any kind of a takedown early in this fight to give Whitaker respect and concern for the shot, then that could decrease Whitaker's production and his offense and his aggression just enough to give Gastelum the advantage. As you know, the American wrestlers, if they have a guy afraid of the takedown, then the guy can't throw as much offense because it allows the takedown, right? And then that gives the wrestler, who also has a powerful punch, advantage because he can throw just arbitrarily, willy-nilly, as much as he wants, not being the man that's fearing the takedown. So I'm thinking it could go that way. They'll be a very competitive fight, talented guys. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well said, mate. Good stuff.
Hey, can I jump in?
Very quickly, go for it.
Yeah, I don't want to disagree with him because I highly respect his opinion. He's very knowledgeable.
Thank you.
I would be really surprised if Gastelum was able to out-wrestle Whitaker. We just saw Yoel Romero, who is world-class, leap years ahead of a wrestler than Gastelum is, and he struggled with Whitaker. And Whitaker, since we've last seen him compete, has actually won the Commonwealth Games in wrestling. And actually,
was that right?
Could have been in the Olympics. Yeah, he could have been in the Olympics. So Robert Whitaker's wrestling is like, it's almost sinful how underrated, and no one ever talks about how good of a wrestler he is. And that's the only thing I want to point out. But you know, in MMA wrestling is different than regular collegiate and amateur wrestling. So the other thing I wanted to point out, and I just noticed this when Colin was talking, because he talked about the similarities to you guys. Another thing is, guys, they're both overachievers. If you think about when they came into the UFC, both being the Ultimate Fighter, I believe Gastelum was the last pick on the Ultimate Fighter show, and Whitaker actually entered the Ultimate Fighter off a loss. So neither one of these guys is supposed to do anything in the sport, and now one's a champion, the other one's challenger for title. That's just a good story.
Yeah, interesting. Good insight.
Yeah, man.
Guys, it's the final part of the show, last 10-15 minutes, and it's answering fan questions. Just a reminder to the panel, the one rule we have on the show, simply don't wait your turn. The floor is yours, guys. So we'll start with Facebook, and it's Matthew Penny who's asking, is there a point when Dana says enough is enough, especially with guys like Silva, BJ Penn, etc.? I'm assuming he means retirement or whatever.
Well, he did that. He did that. Sorry if I jumped ahead of anyone.
No, go on.
He did that with Chuck Liddell 10 years ago. Chuck was a person who he had actually managed prior to being part owner of the UFC. I'm not sure if everyone knew that, but the Zuffa group, the Fertittas, were not the original owners of the UFC. And prior to them owning it, Dana White was not involved in UFC management at all, but was a manager of Chuck Liddell and a friend of his. So perhaps it was because of that close connection to him and the fact that Chuck had been knocked out 3 or 4 times in a row. He put his foot down and said, "This is it. I'm not gonna greenlight any fight, and I'm gonna have my matchmaker Joe Silva not greenlight any fight. You're not gonna get a fight." And let's get something else going here. Now, will he do something like that to someone that's not a personal friend of his, Matthew? It is a great question. Hard to say. Might be a little harder to do. And not only that, but he's a much small percentage owner, if at all, now that he's just the promoter. But yeah, I guess it would be nice if he were to try to take a strong stance with people who are getting older if they're starting to look bad. BJ Penn didn't take a lot of beating, but got subbed quickly and probably can't beat anyone. But more likely if Anderson just gets the crap beaten out of him, and knocked out or just smashed, then I would like to see possibly Dana looking out for him like that. Good question, Matthew.
So what I was going to say is definitely I always thought Dana White is actually very good at approaching fighters when he thinks, enough is enough. He sits them down and says, I think this might be the end. But so I personally think from things I've seen, just watching UFC through the years, he is quite happy to say to him, I really think it's time to retire. But does he push him enough? That's the different story. But then you could say he wants to keep him for the big money fights. Well, does he really? He doesn't try setting up Chuck Liddell versus Tito Ortiz in the UFC, does he? He's not interested in bringing back these veterans to fight in the UFC for big money fights. So he's not interested in seeing. He doesn't want to see these guys get hurt, I don't think. And I think when enough's enough. So, but I think he wants to give them their fair chance. Go out as they wanted to. But unfortunately, 90% of the time they don't go out winning. They go out on 3 or 4 losing streaks. Like Chuck Liddell was the biggest heartbreak for me because he was the one I followed from the very beginning.
Yeah.
So losing him lose that many times at the end.
Yeah, same.
Especially to people like no disrespect.
It's hard.
Evans and stuff, he should have been beating him, and so yeah, it's a shame, but hey ho, here we are now.
Yep. Good point.
I'll jump in. I agree with both guys. I do think the UFC and Dana White and the brass there should be telling guys to retire. I also think that the commission should have a responsibility to not license these guys.
Yeah.
I think that's something. The problem is you have, to me, there's 2 issues. The first issue is, unlike Major League Baseball or international soccer, these guys are making hundreds of millions of dollars and millions of dollars. If you're, guys are starting to make big money now, but if you were coming up in the 90s and early 2000s, you didn't make this kind of money. So it's hard for an Anderson Silva to not get a big payday. He doesn't have that same luxury than, Albert Pujols or whatever the biggest soccer star is. Or, European football stars are. They don't have that.
Yeah.
The other problem is if the UFC releases them, because you kind of can't force a guy to retire. If you release them, a Bellator or a Ryzen or a One or somebody else, bare knuckle. You got guys who've been retiring who now are taking on bare knuckle boxing.
Yeah.
Chris Lytle was the
Mark Godbeer was another one. UK.
Collins as well.
Yeah. So somebody else would give him the responsibility. So that's another issue, and that's why, to me, it still comes down to the sanctioned bodies shouldn't give them licenses.
Yeah, no, you're probably quite right, mate. Let's move on. We've got Miles Painter is asking, should Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series have more female prospects on it to bolster their women's division?
Love to see it. I've been a huge proponent of women's fighting for many years on my MMA Power Hour. Maybe not 50% because there are just not as many women out there, but probably at least 35 95% of our guests are female women's fighters. I started watching women's MMA in actually the late 90s, early 2000s when I would get bootlegged VHS videotapes showing tournaments like L1, Ladies Revenge, and then the remix Smack Girl Cup in 2000.
Wow.
And so big proponent then, and always have been. Sure would love to see more of it. And it's funny, Dana White once said there would never be a female fighter in the UFC. Now he embraces it, but love to see it embrace it more on his show.
And then Ronda Rousey making millions of dollars.
Yeah, cha-ching.
Indeed.
How's that, man?
Indeed, yep.
Absolutely. Let's move on then with Don. Sorry, mate. I know you go jump in.
Can I jump in? Sorry, Dana White's Tuesday Night Contenders is like it's my thing. I love it. I think it's the best thing they're doing. Yes, I would love to see more female prospects. The one issue is, and going to any MMA gym in the world is just a pure numbers game. For you go into the local gym, there's 10 male fighters, maybe 15 male fighters for every female. So it's just, I think it's just a pure numbers thing. But I think it'll be something that when we talk about it 10 years from now, we won't have as much of a problem.
I think it's going to happen eventually for sure, man. But let's move on because we've got lots to get through. We've got Don Wilson who's asking, after last night's performance, who next for Jose Aldo?
Cool, that's an interesting one. Who's next for Jose Aldo? I reckon he should fight Ortega.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a good fight. I don't think his management would want that. They're probably wanting to fight a bit of a softer fighter before Ortega, but I think that's going to be the perfect next matchup, personally.
I agree. I met Brian Ortega real briefly at the Bellator the other day. I had a picture taken with him, and it was actually the worst picture of myself I've ever seen. So I deleted it. It was heartbreaking because I wanted to put it up, but I don't know what was wrong, the lighting or something. But I looked absolutely horrible and atrocious. But he's a very nice guy. Nice young man, Brian Ortega. What a warrior! Even though he lost that fight against Max, man, the guy's got so much heart. And Aldo has proven that as well. I think Chris is right. I'd love to see that fight. I don't know if his management would want that for him, but yeah, that would be my thought. Unless they were to put him up against Yair Rodriguez, which would be extremely exciting. Match, right? Or perhaps the winner of Jeremy Stevens, Zabit Magomed Sharapov. One of those three would be the fight for him.
Zabit, yeah, that'd be good.
So I'm going to give a completely different answer than everybody else. The issue with Jose Aldo is he has 2 losses to Max Holloway, and Max Holloway has already been on a mission to pretty much clean up the division. He had that long run to get to the title where he ran off. And there's a very lack of contenders other than maybe Volkanovski. And like you said, if Zabit wins, there's another contender. But there's very few contenders. And Aldo just took out Moncano, a contender. I don't think it's a wise decision to have a guy who's not going to challenge for the title anytime soon, who's already talked about retiring by the end of this year. I don't think it's wise to have him take out your contenders. I would put him more in a veteran bout. Maybe move up to lightweight, take on. Hey, if Cerrone doesn't get the Conor McGregor fight, why not Aldo versus Cerrone? Or how about? I mean,
could you imagine that?
It's amazing, man. I love it.
How about Nate Diaz? How about Nate Diaz actually wants to fight?
Nah, Diaz isn't fighting anyone. Diaz is such a tease, man. He's not fighting anyone anytime.
He's too busy rolling blunts and chilling.
Exactly, man.
I love that. Dead on, Chris. Spot on, as you guys say.
Well, the question was who should he fight, not who he's gonna.
I suppose. Fair point. All right.
I think Volkanovski, and I'm glad you mentioned him, Keith. He's so impressive. I saw him fight in person. I think even though it may not be the best fight, I think Volkanovski would relish that fight. It would give him a lot more attention. And I think that would be possibly the best, unless they. But you know what? He's teased at a fight at lightweight, and so maybe some veteran fighter up there at 55 who maybe has been kind of winning or losing or dropping down in the ratings. Keith, you may have a good point.
Guys,
the problem is if he takes out Volkanovski, if Volkanovski wins, it's perfect. It's a perfect scenario. If Volkanovski loses, who do you have Holloway fight next?
Right. Well, but then Holloway's got the winner of Zabit versus Jeremy Stevens, as well as Yair Rodriguez. So I don't think he kills everyone, but your point's well taken.
Guys, we're really short on time, so I'll just have to take one more. Let's see. Brian Lacey. Brian Lacey is asking, I think Robert Whittaker has the potential and the skills to be the best middleweight of all time, but looking at the top 15 current middleweights, how do you rate his era compared to that of previous years and previous champions?
How do we rate his era? Okay, I'll let one of you guys go first.
Go for it.
That's a really great question. And if we're being honest, middleweight has always been a starved division of talent.
Yes.
I mean, Anderson Silva is the greatest middleweight of all time.
Yeah.
And it's going to be extremely hard to take that mantle. But if we're talking about it from a talent sense, when you look at guys like Romero, when you look at guys like Rockhold and Weidman, and going outside, Jacare, that's a great example. Going outside with Musashi. I actually think it's more talented now than when Anderson Silva was the champion. It's a good strong, and it might be the strongest it's ever been. So I really like that question. I don't know who asked it. That's a really good question. That said, he's got a long way to go to take the Anderson Silva crown.
Oh,
yeah, I'm sorry, but I agree. I'll make it quick. I'll let you jump in after me, Chris, real quick. I agree with what Keith just said, and I do think that Whittaker may be 2 or 3 wins away if he wins them consecutively without a loss from being possibly talked about up there with Anderson as at least one of the greatest middleweights in history, if not pound for pound.
What I was going to say, John, is not that I know that was the last question, but we were talking about earlier. There was lots of questions about Israel being cocky and people giving him shit. Have you got time to jump onto our
I've got 2 minutes left, but let's see. Yes, Israel Adesanya is a mirror image of Anderson Silva, but isn't he just the cocky piss version of it, which is at Elf for Elf on Twitter.
You got to give the guys dues, though. The reason he's cocky is because he is doing what Anderson Silva did when he first started. The first 4 fights he's had, he's got 3 performances already.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's got the first 3 performances tonight. So what was Anderson Silva's first fight against
Lieben, isn't it? Chris Lieben.
Didn't he land 97% accuracy? I think that fight was, or something stupid like that.
And I'm pretty sure he was the underdog in that fight as well. Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
Incredible, man.
So yeah, that's why Israel's so cocky. He's come in and he might not be under the top opponents, but it's the top. He's had 4 fights, performance the 9th, but he had a tough one against Marvin Vettori, split decision. So he is human. He can be beaten. So Anderson would be a good test for him. So yeah.
Absolutely, man. Well, there you have it, guys. UFC 234 Melbourne this weekend. Sorry, guys, we're just out of time. But I just want to wrap up with saying thanks for the panel. Thank you so much for everyone who got in touch with our questions, man. I'm so sorry we couldn't get through them, but let me just extend my thanks to the panel, and we'll start with Chris Allen. Chris, let our people know all about MMA Fight Bible and the great work you do online, my friend.
Will do. I'll be super quick, man. Yep. So I've got a Facebook page, MMA Fight Bible. I've only been doing this sort of stuff for just over a year now, so I'm quite new to it. So it's nice to be on the panel with these certain guys here. So it's very inspiring. I'll be following your pages and learning from it, and hopefully you'll see me get bigger and better soon.
Superb, man. Superb. Keith Shillan, a pleasure to get your time, sir. Let our listeners know all about MMA Takeover and everything. All the great work you do online, sir. Let our people know.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, it was an absolute honor. I love talking fights, and you guys are great to talk fights with. Learning from you guys, it's been fantastic. You can find all my work. You can find it at the MMA Takeover, at Fansided or SureDog, and I also help. I have a podcast, and I also help with the Loudmouth MMA podcast. If you want to find me, it's my name, Keith Shillan, with MMA at the end. So at Twitter, Keith Shillan MMA, or find me on Facebook, and I pretty much accept anybody who wants to talk fights. So.
Superb, awesome stuff. Finally, to Colin Crandall. Colin, a massive thank you. Let Martial Arts Chat listeners know all about the MMA Power Hour, sir.
Absolutely, you're very welcome, John. It's been an absolute pleasure to join you and these great journalists, Keith and Chris. We are the MMA Power Hour. We stream live on Facebook, coming up on 2 years now, and we've also recently signed a contract, and we've been streaming live for 3 weeks on Fight TV. That's FITE TV. It's an app you can download for free. If you guys would do that, that would be great. Also, I'd like to invite Chris and Keith to hit me up on MMA Power on Facebook to remind me where I can find your shows, because I will follow them. I will like your page and your videos. And if you would do the same for me, that would be great. My name, Colin Crandall, is my primary Facebook file. Hit us up. I'm all about interacting with the fans and the listeners, and all respect to my fellow journalists, and any support you guys need from me, don't hesitate to